The hammer fell, and Emma Rowland became property. Standing on that frozen courthouse platform with her infant son clutched to her chest, she watched men bid on her body like she was livestock at a county fair. Her late husband's debts had turned her into merchandise, and the saloon owner's grin promised a hell she couldn't let her baby witness. Then a snow-covered stranger burst through the doors, and everything changed. Stay until the end of this story and comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has traveled. The courthouse in Ridgway, Colorado Territory wasn't built for auctions of human souls, but on that bitter February morning in 1879, that's exactly what it hosted. Emma Rowland stood on the makeshift platform, 3 stacked crates covered with a threadbare canvas, and felt the wood creak beneath her boots. Her arms ached from holding 8-month-old Noah, but she'd sooner die than set him down among these wolves. The baby's weight was the only real thing in a world that had turned nightmarish in the span of 6 weeks. 6 weeks since her husband Thomas died in the mine collapse. 6 weeks since the landlord, Silas Garrett, appeared at her door with papers claiming Thomas owed 3 years back rent plus interest. 6 weeks since she learned that widows had no rights, no voice, and no mercy coming. Lot 17, Silas announced from beside the platform, his voice carrying across the packed courthouse. One healthy woman, age 22, experienced in cooking, sewing, and housekeeping. Comes with infant. Starting bid, $50. Emma's stomach turned. Lot 17, like she was a piece of furniture. The room was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of unwashed men who'd come in from the cold specifically for this. The legitimate auction, farm equipment, a few horses, some confiscated mining tools, had concluded an hour ago. Most of the respectable families had left. The men who remained had stayed for exactly this moment. This illegal, unconscionable moment that happened in shadows all across the frontier where law was scarce, and powerful men did what they wanted. $50, called a voice from the back. Emma didn't turn to look. She kept her eyes fixed on the wall behind Silas, on a crack in the plaster shaped like a tree branch. She'd stared at that crack for the past 20 minutes, using it as an anchor while her world dissolved. 60, countered another man, closer to the front. This one she recognized, Luther Vance, who owned the Silver Dollar Saloon. His establishment had rooms upstairs where women worked until they were used up or dead. He was looking at her the way men looked at horses, assessing her teeth and bone structure. Emma pulled Noah closer. The baby fussed, sensing her tension, and she bounced him gently, despite the trembling in her arms. She'd wrapped him in every blanket she owned, layering them until he looked like a small bundle of rags. At least he was warm. At least that. 75, said a miner she didn't know, a man with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. The bids climbed. Emma stopped listening to the amounts and focused on keeping her breathing steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the same way she'd breathed through Noah's birth when the midwife told her to hold on, that it would be over soon. But this wouldn't be over soon. This was just beginning. $200! Luther Vance's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. 200, and I'll take them both tonight. A silence fell. $200 was a fortune for most men in Ridgway. The miners and drifters who'd been bidding out of curiosity or cruelty fell back, knowing they were outmatched. Emma's eyes finally moved from the crack in the wall to Silas Garrett. The landlord was smiling, clearly pleased with how high the bidding had gone. He'd get his money and then some. The fact that he was selling a human being, a woman with a baby, didn't seem to trouble his conscience at all. 200 going once? Silas called. Fair warning, gentlemen, this is a fine opportunity. The woman's clean, healthy, and she comes with $500. The voice came from the doorway, and it stopped Silas mid-sentence. Every head in the courthouse turned. A man stood in the entrance, snow still dusting his dark coat and the brim of his hat. He was tall. Emma's first thought was how he had to duck slightly under the doorframe, with broad shoulders and a stance that suggested he was used to being obeyed. His face was weathered in the way of men who worked outdoors, lines carved around his eyes and mouth, but he couldn't have been much past 30. He stepped into the room and Emma saw his eyes for the first time. Dark blue, like deep water, and currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. $500, he repeated, his voice carrying clearly despite not being raised. Cash. Right now. Silas recovered quickly, his merchant's instincts overriding his surprise. Well now, Mr. Stanton. Cole Stanton. Emma saw recognition flicker across several faces in the crowd. Apparently this man was known, though she'd never heard the name. Mr. Stanton, Silas continued, his smile widening. That's a generous offer, but I should inform you that the bidding is conducted in increments. I don't care about your increments, Cole interrupted. His gaze hadn't left Emma. $500 ends this right now. You get your money, everyone else goes home, and this woman and her child come with me. Luther Vance stood up from his seat in the third row. Now hold on. I had a standing bid of $200. You can't just... I can, and I did. Cole finally looked away from Emma to face Luther. You've got a problem with that, Vance. We can discuss it outside. The threat was quiet but unmistakable. Luther was a big man, used to using his size to intimidate, but something in Cole's demeanor made him hesitate. After a moment, he sat back down, muttering under his breath. Silas cleared his throat. $500 is substantial. If you have that sum on your person, Mr. Stanton. Cole was already reaching into his coat. He pulled out a leather pouch that clinked heavily as he tossed it onto the table in front of Silas. Count it. It's all there. While Silas fumbled with the pouch, hands shaking slightly as he opened it and began extracting coins, Cole turned back to Emma. He approached the platform slowly, as if worried about startling her. Ma'am, he said quietly, voice pitched for her ears only. My name's Cole Stanton. I have a ranch about 8 miles north of here. I'm going to get you and your baby out of this situation, and I'm going to take you somewhere safe. That's all I'm planning to do. You understand? Emma stared at him. She'd learned not to trust men, especially men who made promises. Thomas had promised her a good life when he brought her west. That hadn't worked out. Silas had promised her time to gather the money she allegedly owed. That had been a lie. But this man's eyes were steady, and there was something in his face, some echo of pain that she recognized because she'd seen it in her own mirror. Why? She whispered. Noah squirmed in her arms, and she shifted his weight. Cole's expression softened slightly. Because this is wrong. Because you deserve better. And because... He paused, seemed to choose his words carefully. Because I couldn't help someone else once. Maybe I can help you. Before Emma could respond, Silas called out, It's all here! $500, exact count. He sounded almost giddy. Mr. Stanton, the woman and child are yours, as witnessed by all present. I'll draw up the papers. No papers, Cole said sharply, turning to face him. This isn't a property transfer. I paid your illegal debt claim against Mrs. Rowland. That's all this is. She's free to go, and she's choosing to come work at my ranch of her own will. Anyone here want to dispute that? The room was silent. Emma realized what he was doing, giving her an out, a story that didn't involve being purchased like cattle. Technically, it was a fiction. Legally, this whole proceeding was probably criminal. But in this room, with these witnesses, Cole was rewriting the narrative before it could be set in stone. Mrs. Rowland? Cole turned back to her, and this time he extended his hand. Will you come with me? Emma looked down at Noah, at his small face peeking out from the layers of blankets. Then she looked back at Cole Stanton, this stranger who'd just paid a fortune to save her from hell. She had no good choices. But she had one choice that wasn't Luther Vance and the Silver Dollar Saloon. She reached out and took Cole's hand. His grip was warm and solid. He helped her down from the platform carefully, steadying her when her legs nearly gave out. She'd been standing rigid for so long that her muscles had locked up. Get your things, he said quietly. Whatever you brought with you. This is it, Emma gestured to herself and Noah. Everything else? Silas took it all for the debt. She saw Cole's jaw tighten, saw anger flash in his eyes, but he only nodded. Then we're done here. Let's go. He guided her toward the door, one hand lightly touching her elbow. Emma kept waiting for the trap to spring, for him to reveal his true intentions, but he just walked her steadily through the crowd of staring men. At the doorway, he paused to collect a heavy coat that he'd apparently left hanging there. Instead of putting it on himself, he draped it over Emma's shoulders, over the thin shawl she'd been wearing. It's cold out. he said simply. Then they were outside, and the February air hit Emma like a slap. Snow was falling in thick flakes, already accumulating on the street. The wind cut through even with Cole's coat wrapped around her. "My horse is just here," Cole said, nodding toward a massive roan stallion tied to the hitching post. The animal was covered in snow, suggesting Cole had ridden hard to get here. "Can you ride?" Emma shook her head. "Not well, and not with Noah. I'll hold him. You'll ride in front of me." Cole was already untying the horse. "We need to move fast. Storm's getting worse, and I want to be clear of town before anyone gets second thoughts about our arrangement." He mounted in one smooth motion, then reached down for Noah. Emma hesitated, every maternal instinct screaming not to hand her baby to a stranger, but the practical part of her brain won out. She passed Noah up, and Cole tucked the baby against his chest with surprising gentleness. "Now you," he said, extending his free hand. Emma had never mounted a horse from the ground, especially not one this tall, but desperation gave her strength. She grabbed Cole's hand and his arm, put her foot in the stirrup, and hauled herself up with his help. She ended up sitting awkwardly sideways in front of him, Noah between them. "Hold on to him," Cole instructed, waiting until Emma had Noah secure in her arms again before he urged the horse forward. They moved through Ridgeway at a controlled pace that still felt urgent. Emma didn't look back at the courthouse. She kept her eyes forward, watching snow accumulate on the horse's mane, focusing on the rhythm of hoofbeats. They'd made it maybe half a mile out of town when she heard other horses behind them. Cole heard them too. She felt him tense, felt his arm come around her waist to steady her as he urged their mount faster. "Hold tight," he said in her ear. Emma clutched Noah and leaned into Cole's chest as the horse surged into a gallop. The world became a blur of white and gray, snow stinging her face, wind roaring in her ears. She couldn't see who was following them and didn't dare turn to look. Cole guided the horse off the main road onto what must have been a trail, though Emma couldn't see it through the snow. Trees closed in around them, bare branches reaching overhead. The horse's breathing grew labored, foam starting to show around the bit. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded. Either they'd lost whoever was following, or the followers had given up in the face of the worsening storm. Cole didn't slow down until they'd gone at least another mile. When he finally pulled the horse back to a walk, the animal was heaving, sides pumping like bellows. "Sorry, boy," Cole murmured, patting the horse's neck. "I know. We'll rest soon." Emma realized she was shaking, and not just from cold. The reality of what had just happened was crashing over her in waves. She'd been sold. She'd been bought. She was in the wilderness with a complete stranger, in the middle of a blizzard, with her infant son. "Where are we going?" Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "My ranch is still about 6 miles north," Cole said. "But we're not going to make it in this storm. There's a homestead about 2 miles ahead, good people who owe me a favor. We'll shelter there tonight, then head home when the weather clears." Home. The word sounded foreign. Noah began to cry, the thin wail of a cold, hungry baby. Emma tried to soothe him, but her arms were numb, and she had nothing to offer him. She'd fed him the last of the milk she'd brought right before the auction. "Not much farther," Cole said, and Emma wasn't sure if he was talking to her, the baby, or the horse. They pushed on through the snow. Emma lost track of time, lost in the white void of the blizzard. She might have dozed, exhaustion finally overcoming fear, because she jerked awake when Cole brought the horse to a stop. "We're here," he said. Emma blinked snow from her eyelashes and saw a small cabin, light glowing warm in the windows. Smoke rose from the chimney. It looked like something from a fairy tale, a beacon of safety in the wilderness. Cole dismounted and helped Emma down, taking Noah again so she could get her feet under her. Her legs nearly buckled, but Cole steadied her with a hand under her elbow. "I've got you," he said. "Come on." He led her to the door and knocked, 3 sharp raps followed by 2 softer ones, some kind of signal. The door opened immediately, revealing a small woman with gray hair and a weathered face that broke into a smile when she saw Cole. "Cole Stanton, you damned fool! What are you doing out in—" She stopped when she saw Emma and Noah. Her eyes widened. "Oh, my stars! Come in! Come in right now, all of you!" The warmth of the cabin enveloped Emma like a physical embrace. She stood dripping on the wooden floor, too tired to even take in her surroundings properly. Martha, this is Emma Rowland and her son Noah, Cole was saying. They need shelter for the night. I need to see to my horse. James, Martha called toward the back of the cabin. James, get out here. An older man appeared, tall and rangy, with kind eyes. He took one look at the situation and nodded. I'll handle the horse, Cole. You get inside and get warm. Cole hesitated, then handed the reins to James and came back inside, shutting the door against the wind. Martha was already bustling around Emma, clucking like a worried hen. You're frozen solid, dear. And this baby. Oh, this sweet baby. Come here, let's get you both by the fire. She guided Emma to a chair near the hearth, and Emma sank into it gratefully. The heat from the fire was almost painful against her frozen skin. Noah needs to eat, Emma said weakly. I don't have anything to... I've got goat's milk, Martha said immediately. Fresh this morning. We'll warm it up and get something in this little one, don't you worry. Emma wanted to protest, to explain that she couldn't pay for any of this, but exhaustion won out. She sat numbly while Martha took Noah from her arms and began the process of feeding him, warming milk in a small pot, testing it on her wrist, pouring it into a bottle. Cole stood by the door, watching. Emma met his eyes across the room. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once, then looked away, as if her gratitude made him uncomfortable. James came back inside, stamping snow from his boots. Horse is settled. He'll be fine. He looked at Cole with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. You want to tell us what's going on, son? Cole sighed and pulled off his hat, running a hand through his dark hair. There was an auction in Ridgeway. Illegal, but nobody was stopping it. Mrs. Rowland was being sold to pay a debt claim. Martha's hand stilled on the milk bottle. Sold? To Luther Vance, if I hadn't intervened. Cole's voice was flat, but Emma heard the anger underneath. James swore quietly. Martha's face hardened into something fierce. So you bought her instead, Martha said slowly. I paid off the claim, Cole corrected. She's not property. She's going to work at the ranch. Work? James repeated, his tone skeptical. Yes. Honest work, honest wages. She and the boy get room and board, privacy and safety. That's all. Martha and James exchanged a long look, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Martha nodded and went back to preparing Noah's bottle. You're a good man, Cole Stanton, she said quietly. Foolish sometimes, but good. Emma listened to this exchange in a daze. Work, wages, privacy, safety. The words felt too good to be true, promises that would surely be broken as soon as it was convenient. But for tonight, in this warm cabin with the blizzard raging outside, she allowed herself to hope. Martha got Noah fed and settled, then turned her attention to Emma. She brought bread, cheese, and hot tea, simple food that tasted like heaven. Emma ate mechanically, barely tasting it, just trying to get something in her stomach. You'll sleep in the loft, Martha was saying. It's warm up there, and there's good blankets. The baby can sleep with you, or I can make up a little nest for him. With me, Emma said immediately. She wasn't letting Noah out of her sight. Of course, dear. Cole, you'll take the other room? I'll sleep down here by the fire, Cole said. I've imposed on you enough. Nonsense. The other room has a bed and you'll use it. They argued about it for a while, but Martha won. Emma got the sense Martha usually won arguments in this household. Eventually, Emma found herself climbing a ladder to a cozy loft space. Noah bundled in her arms. Martha had laid out thick quilts and soft pillows. Emma settled Noah in the middle of the bed, building a wall of blankets around him so he couldn't roll, then collapsed beside him. Below, she could hear voices, Cole talking with Martha and James. She couldn't make out the words, but the tones were warm, familiar. These people knew each other well. Emma closed her eyes, every muscle in her body aching with exhaustion. Noah made small sleeping sounds beside her, milk-drunk and content. For the first time in 6 weeks, she let herself cry. Silent tears that soaked into the pillow, releasing some of the fear and grief she'd been holding so tightly. She'd been saved. Maybe. Possibly. Or maybe she'd just traded one nightmare for another, but tomorrow would tell. Tomorrow, when the storm cleared and they rode to Cole Stanton's ranch, she'd learn the truth about what he really wanted from her. For tonight, she was warm and fed, her baby was safe, and that was more than she'd dared hope for when she'd stood on that auction platform. It would have to be enough. Downstairs, Cole sat at Martha's kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee he didn't really want. James sat across from him, eyes shrewd and knowing. "You want to tell me what you're really doing, boy?" the older man asked quietly. Cole stared into his coffee. "I told you. I know what you told me. Now I'm asking what's true." Martha was washing dishes, but Cole knew she was listening. These two had been like parents to him since he'd arrived in Colorado 5 years ago, half wild with grief. They'd helped him build his ranch, talked him through the dark times, never asked for anything in return. He owed them honesty. "There was a woman," he said finally, "back in Kansas before I came here. Her name was Sarah. She was like a sister to me. We grew up together." James waited. Martha had stopped washing dishes. "She married a man named William Porter. Seemed like a good match. I left for Colorado, was going to make my fortune, come back and visit. But then I got word that William had died and Sarah was in trouble. His family was claiming she owed debts, trying to force her into a situation." Cole's hands tightened on the coffee cup. "By the time I got back to Kansas, I was 3 days too late. He couldn't say it. She'd decided death was better than what they had planned for her. Hung herself in the barn where we used to play as kids." Martha made a soft sound of sympathy. "I failed her," Cole said simply. "I was too late, and she died alone and desperate. I swore I'd never let that happen again if I could prevent it." "So when you heard about the auction today," James began, "a friend sent word yesterday that something bad was happening in Ridgeway. I rode through the night to get there. When I saw that woman standing on that platform holding her baby," Cole shook his head, "I saw Sarah. I saw what I failed to prevent, and I couldn't let it happen again." "And so you paid $500, Martha said gently. "Cole, that's nearly everything you had saved." "I know. And now you've got a traumatized widow and an infant to care for." "I know that too." James leaned back in his chair, studying Cole's face. "What are you going to do with her?" "Exactly what I said. Give her work if she wants it, give her safety, give her time to heal and figure out her next step. When she's ready to move on, I'll help her do that too, whatever she needs." "And if she doesn't want to work? If she can't?" Martha asked. Cole met her eyes. "Then she doesn't have to. I'm not going to force anything. I need to know she's safe. That's all." Martha dried her hands and came to sit at the table. She reached out and covered Cole's hand with her own. "You're a good man," she said again. "But you can't save everyone, Cole. You can't fix what happened to Sarah by rescuing every woman in trouble." "I know, but I can save this one." He looked up at the loft where Emma and Noah slept. "I have to try." James sighed. "Well then, you'd better get some sleep. You've got a long ride home tomorrow and a lot of changes coming to your life." Cole nodded and stood, draining the last of his coffee. "Thank you. For the shelter, for the understanding, for everything." "That's what family's for," Martha said simply. Cole went to the small bedroom and lay down on the bed, but sleep was long in coming. He stared at the ceiling and thought about Sarah, about Emma, about the choices that brought people to the brink of despair. And he thought about what came next, bringing a traumatized woman and a baby into his solitary life, trying to help without making things worse, trying to atone for being 3 days too late 5 years ago. Outside, the blizzard raged. Inside, 4 people sheltered from the storm, each carrying their own wounds, their own hopes, their own fears about tomorrow. But for tonight, they were warm and safe. And sometimes, that was all anyone could ask for. The storm broke just before dawn, leaving the world wrapped in pristine white silence. Emma woke to Noah's fussing and the unfamiliar comfort of a warm bed, disoriented for a moment before the previous day's events came rushing back. She sat up carefully, gathering her son close, and heard voices drifting up from below. "Can't take them out in this depth," James was saying. "Snow's got to be 3 feet in places." "The main trail will be drifted over," Cole replied. "But if we follow the creek bed, stay in the tree cover where the wind couldn't pile it up, that'll add 2 hours to your ride, and the temperature's dropping. You've got a woman and baby to think about now. not just yourself. Emma climbed down the ladder, Noah perched on her hip. The three people at the table looked up as she appeared. Martha's face immediately softened into a warm smile. "Good morning, dear. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," Emma admitted. It was true, despite everything, exhaustion had pulled her under into dreamless sleep. "Thank you for your kindness." "Nonsense. Come eat something. I've got porridge on and fresh eggs." Cole stood as Emma approached, a gesture of respect that surprised her. Most men didn't stand for women like her anymore, widows with questionable debts and no family connections. "Mrs. Rowland," he said with a slight nod. "We were just discussing the journey to the ranch. The storm left heavy snow. James thinks we should wait another day before attempting the ride." Emma looked between the two men, reading the tension there. Cole wanted to leave. James thought it was dangerous, and she was the complication making it difficult. "I don't want to impose on Martha and James longer than necessary," she said quietly. "If you think we can make it safely—" "It's not an imposition," Martha insisted, bustling over with a bowl of porridge. "You're welcome here as long as needed." But Emma saw something flicker in Cole's expression. Not impatience exactly, but urgency. He wanted to get home, to get this situation settled on his own territory where he had control. "We'll leave after breakfast," Cole decided. "Bundle up warm. I'll take it slow and careful." James didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. "I'll help you prepare the horses then. You'll need to take the pack horse too. I'm sending supplies." "James, you don't have to—" "We're sending supplies," Martha said firmly, in a tone that ended the discussion. "You've got 2 extra mouths to feed now, and that baby needs proper milk. I'm sending the goat." Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but Martha's expression brooked no opposition. Emma watched this interaction with growing curiosity. These people clearly cared for Cole, treated him like family. What kind of man inspired that devotion from strangers? Breakfast was hearty, porridge with honey, eggs fried in butter, thick slices of bread. Emma tried to eat slowly, but her body was starved for decent food after weeks of making thin soup stretch across too many days. Noah nursed contentedly, and Martha showed Emma how to prepare the goat's milk properly for when her own supply wasn't enough. "You'll need bottles," Martha said, packing a small crate with supplies. "And these rags work well as diapers. I cut them from old sheets. They're soft, won't chafe. And this salve here, for when he gets a rash—" Emma felt tears prick her eyes at this casual generosity. "I can't pay you back." "Did I ask for payment?" Martha's voice was sharp but not unkind. "That baby needs care, and you need help. That's all there is to it." By the time they were ready to leave, the sun was fully up, making the snow-covered landscape sparkle like it was dusted with diamonds. James had saddled 2 horses, Cole's big roan, and a gentler mare for Emma. The pack horse was loaded with supplies, including a small crate where Martha had somehow rigged a nest for the goat. "She's mild-tempered," James told Cole. "Won't give you trouble. Her name's Bess." Cole helped Emma mount the mare, then handed Noah up to her. The baby was wrapped in so many layers he looked like a small bundle of fabric with a face peeking out. "Stay close behind me," Cole instructed. "The mare will follow the roan naturally, but if you start to struggle, call out immediately. Don't try to push through if something feels wrong." Emma nodded, adjusting her grip on Noah. She'd ridden before, but not often, and never in conditions like this. They set out slowly, Cole leading on the roan, Emma following on the mare, and the pack horse with Bess the goat trailing behind. Martha and James stood in their doorway waving until the little cabin disappeared from view behind the snow-laden trees. The journey was harder than Emma had anticipated. The snow was deep in places, forcing the horses to lunge through drifts. Her thighs ached from gripping the saddle, and her arms burned from holding Noah secure while managing the reins. But she bit her lip and stayed silent, determined not to be more trouble than she'd already been. Cole kept his word about going slow. He frequently looked back to check on her, and twice he stopped to let the horses rest and to check that Emma and Noah were holding up. "How are you managing?" he asked during the second stop, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I'm fine," Emma lied. In truth, she was exhausted and frozen, her feet numb in her thin boots despite the extra socks Martha had insisted she wear. Cole's eyes narrowed slightly, like he could see through her deception, but he didn't call her on it. "We're about halfway there. Another hour, maybe less if the trail stays clear." They pressed on. Emma lost herself in the rhythm of the horse's gait, the endless white landscape, the weight of Noah against her chest. She was so focused on just enduring that she almost didn't notice when the terrain began to change. The trees thinned out, revealing rolling meadows buried under snow. In the distance, Emma saw buildings, a house, a barn, several smaller structures. Smoke rose from the chimney, a dark line against the pale sky. "That's home," Cole said, and there was something in his voice, pride maybe, or relief. As they drew closer, Emma could see the ranch more clearly. The house was larger than she'd expected, built of solid timber with a covered porch running along the front. The barn was enormous, well-maintained, with a peaked roof designed to shed snow. There were corrals, a chicken coop, what looked like a smokehouse, and several other outbuildings she couldn't identify. This wasn't some rough frontier cabin. This was a real ranch, a working operation. Cole Stanton had clearly put years of labor and significant resources into building this place. A dog came bounding through the snow toward them, barking enthusiastically. It was a large animal, some mix of shepherd and hound, with a thick coat and intelligent eyes. "That's Bear," Cole said. "He's friendly, just excited. Bear, sit." The dog immediately sat, though his tail continued wagging furiously. They rode up to the barn, and Cole dismounted, then came to help Emma down. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet hit the ground. They'd gone numb from the cold and the hours in the saddle. Cole caught her elbow, steadying her. "I've got you. Can you stand?" Emma nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure. She focused on holding Noah, letting Cole take most of her weight until feeling started returning to her legs in painful prickles. "Let's get you inside where it's warm," Cole said. "I'll come back for the horses and the supplies." "I can help. You're frozen half to death, and you're holding a baby. Inside. Now." The command was gentle but firm. Emma was too tired to argue. She let Cole guide her through the snow to the house, up the porch steps, and through the front door. The interior was dim after the brightness of the snow, but warm, blessedly warm. Emma stood dripping on the wooden floor, taking in her surroundings. The main room was large, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. There was a kitchen area with a proper stove, a table with chairs, comfortable-looking furniture arranged near the hearth. Everything was clean and orderly, though clearly the domain of a man living alone. No curtains on the windows, no decorative touches, purely functional. "Sit by the fire," Cole instructed. "I'll get it built up higher, then I need to tend the horses. Don't go anywhere." He moved quickly, adding logs to the fire until it was roaring, then disappeared back outside. Emma sank into a chair near the hearth and carefully unwrapped Noah from his layers. The baby was red-faced and fussy, too warm now after being too cold before. She heard Cole making trips back and forth, bringing in supplies, his boots stomping on the porch to shake off snow. Bear the dog came inside at some point and settled near the fire, watching Emma with friendly curiosity. When Cole finally came in to stay, he looked windburned and exhausted. He hung his coat by the door, then stood awkwardly for a moment, as if uncertain what to do next. "I'll show you where you'll sleep," he said finally. "Then I'll get food started." He led her down a short hallway to a bedroom. It was simply furnished: a bed with a plain quilt, a chest of drawers, a washstand with a basin and pitcher. But the mattress looked comfortable, and there was a window with a view of the mountains in the distance. "This is your room," Cole said. "There's another bedroom at the end of the hall. That's mine. The door in between is a storage room, but I can clear it out if you need more space." Emma stared at the bed, then at Cole. "You're giving me a bedroom? A private bedroom?" He looked confused by her surprise. "Of course. Where else would you sleep?" "I thought—" She stopped, not wanting to voice all the terrible assumptions she'd made about what would be expected of her. Understanding dawned in Cole's eyes. "Mrs. Rowland, I meant what I said yesterday. You and your son get room, board, privacy, and safety. This is your space. I won't enter without permission. The door has a lock if you want to use it." Emma felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of fear she'd been carrying. "Why?" The question came out as barely a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough. Because you needed help, that's all. Now, I'll let you get settled. Take whatever time you need. I'll be in the kitchen when you're ready." He left, closing the door gently behind him. Emma stood in the middle of the room, Noah making sleepy sounds against her shoulder. Slowly, she walked to the bed and sat down. The mattress gave beneath her weight, softer than anything she'd slept on in months. There were pillows, clean blankets, a rag rug on the floor. She lay back, settling Noah beside her, and stared at the ceiling. This couldn't be real. Men didn't do things like this without expecting something in return. But Cole had given her a locked door, privacy, his word. Maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. She must have dozed because the next thing she knew, there was a soft knock on the door, and Cole's voice calling, "Mrs. Rowland, I've got food ready if you're hungry." Emma sat up, disoriented. Noah was still sleeping, so she left him on the bed surrounded by pillows and went to the door. When she opened it, Cole was standing in the hallway, careful to stay back, not crowding her. "I made stew," he said, "and there's bread. Nothing fancy, but it's hot." Emma followed him to the kitchen, where he'd set the table for two. The stew smelled incredible, rich and savory. Her stomach growled audibly. "Sit," Cole said. "I'll get you a bowl." They ate in awkward silence at first. Emma was too hungry to be polite, eating quickly, and Cole seemed content to focus on his own food. But eventually, practicalities had to be addressed. "I'll need to know what work you want me to do," Emma said, setting down her spoon. "You mentioned wages. I need to understand the arrangement." Cole leaned back in his chair. "Can you cook?" "Yes." "Clean? Do laundry?" "Yes." "Then that's the work. Keep the house, cook meals, tend the chickens if you're willing. I've been managing it myself, but it'll be good to have help. As for wages—" He paused, seeming to calculate. "Room and board for you and the boy, plus $10 a month. That's fair for a housekeeper." Emma's eyes widened. $10 a month was generous, more than fair. "That's too much. It's what the work is worth." Cole's tone suggested the matter wasn't up for negotiation. "You'll earn your keep, Mrs. Rowland. This isn't charity." "Emma," she said suddenly. "You can call me Emma." Something shifted in Cole's expression. "Emma," he repeated. "And you can call me Cole. Mr. Stanton makes me feel like my father." A ghost of a smile touched Emma's lips, the first Cole had seen from her. "All right, Cole." Over the next few days, a routine began to establish itself. Emma woke early, fed Noah, then started breakfast while Cole went to tend the animals and do whatever ranching tasks the winter weather allowed. He'd come in for the meal, eat quickly, then disappear back outside. Emma would clean, do small mending tasks, and care for Noah. Cole would return for lunch, then go out again. Dinner was the longest meal, though conversation remained sparse. Emma learned that Cole had built this ranch from nothing over 5 years, that he ran cattle but had sold most of the herd before winter, keeping only his breeding stock and horses. He employed 2 ranch hands during busy seasons, but they were gone for the winter, working in town or further south where there was work to be found. She learned that he was a man of few words but consistent action. He did what he said he would do. When he promised something, he kept the promise. On the 3rd night, Emma woke to Noah's crying and found the house freezing. The fire had died down too far. She stumbled out to the main room in her nightgown and was trying to rebuild the fire with shaking hands when Cole appeared from his own room, already pulling on a shirt. "Here, let me," he said, gently moving her aside. Within minutes, he had the fire roaring again. "You should have called me. I didn't want to wake you." "Emma," he said her name firmly. "If you need something, especially at night when it's cold, you wake me. Understood?" She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. Cole disappeared into his room and came back with a heavy quilt. "Keep this in your room," he said, draping it around her shoulders. "And tomorrow I'll move the cradle in here, closer to the fire. It'll be warmer for the boy." "The cradle?" "I started it last night. Should have it finished tomorrow." Emma stared at him. "You're making a cradle?" "Baby needs somewhere to sleep besides a nest of blankets." He said it matter-of-factly, like building furniture for her child was the most normal thing in the world. "Now get some sleep. Morning comes early." The next evening, When Emma emerged from putting Noah down for his nap, there was a cradle in the main room. It was beautiful, simple but well-crafted, with smooth rockers and high sides to keep a baby safe. Cole was sanding the last rough edges, wood shavings scattered around his boots. "It's perfect," Emma whispered, running her hand along the polished wood. Cole shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "It's functional. I'll make a better one when I have more time, with carvings maybe." "No!" Emma's voice was fierce. "It's perfect exactly as it is." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe, or the first fragile threads of trust beginning to form. The weather stayed cold, and Emma settled into the rhythm of ranch life. She discovered that Cole was right. She earned her keep. Keeping house for an active rancher was real work. There were meals to cook, endless dishes, laundry that froze stiff on the line and had to be brought in to finish drying by the fire. She learned to bake bread in Cole's temperamental stove, to make soap from lard and lye, to coax the chickens into laying even in the dead of winter. Cole, for his part, maintained his careful distance. He never entered her room without permission. He never touched her casually, the way men often did with women they considered beneath them. If he needed to hand her something, he set it down rather than risk their fingers brushing. Emma found herself watching him, trying to understand this strange man who'd paid a fortune to save her and asked for nothing in return. He was strong. She saw that in the way he handled heavy feed sacks, the way he could calm a spooked horse with just his voice and hands. But there was gentleness there, too. She'd seen him spend an hour doctoring a chicken with a hurt wing, his large hands infinitely patient. He was also lonely. She realized this slowly, seeing it in the way his face lit up when she asked him questions at dinner, the way he'd linger over his coffee to keep the conversation going just a little longer. One evening, about 2 weeks into her stay at the ranch, Emma nerved herself up to ask the question that had been haunting her. "Why did you really pay for me at that auction?" She set down her mending and looked at him directly. "I know you said you wanted to help, but $500 is more than help. That's a fortune. So why?" Cole was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. He stared into the fire, his coffee cup cradled in his hands. "I told Martha and James this," he said finally. "Might as well tell you too. There was a woman back in Kansas before I came here. Her name was Sarah. She was like a sister to me. We grew up together, played in the same fields, learned to ride on the same horses. When I decided to come west, she was engaged to a man named William Porter. Seemed like a good man. I figured she'd be happy." Emma stayed very still, sensing this story was painful. "William died 2 years after they married," Cole continued. "His family claimed Sarah owed them money. Inheritance debts, they called it. They tried to force her to marry William's brother to settle the account. He was a cruel man, mean drunk. Sarah was desperate." His hands tightened on the coffee cup. "She sent me a letter asking for help. It took 3 weeks to reach me because I'd moved ranches. By the time I got it and rode back to Kansas, I was 3 days too late. She'd hung herself rather than submit to what they wanted from her." Emma's breath caught. "Oh, Cole, I failed her," he said simply. "I was too late, and she died thinking nobody cared enough to save her. So when I heard about the auction in Ridgeway, when I saw you standing there holding your baby..." He finally looked at Emma, and his eyes were full of old pain. "I couldn't be too late again." Emma felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry about Sarah." "So am I." Cole set down his coffee cup. "You asked why I did it, that's why. You needed saving, and I was there, that's all." But it wasn't all, Emma thought. It was everything. It was a man carrying 5 years of guilt trying to atone. It was kindness and grief and determination all tangled together. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not being too late this time." Cole nodded, then stood abruptly. "I should check on the horses one more time before bed. Sleep well, Emma." He pulled on his coat and disappeared into the night, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts and her quietly sleeping son. Something had shifted between them with that conversation. Emma felt it in the days that followed. The awkwardness eased. They talked more at meals, about small things at first, the weather and the chickens, and whether to slaughter one of the pigs before spring, but gradually deeper topics emerged. Emma told him about Thomas, about the good years before the mine work broke him down, about the pregnancy that gave her Noah but took her husband's attention as he became obsessed with earning more money to support a family. Cole talked about building the ranch, about his dreams of expanding the operation, about the loneliness of frontier life. They were becoming, Emma realized with some surprise, friends. Then came the morning everything changed. Emma was in the kitchen kneading bread dough when she heard a commotion outside, horse hooves, Bear barking frantically, and then a sickening thud followed by Cole's sharp cry of pain. She ran to the window and saw Cole on the ground near the barn, one of the horses rearing above him. Without thinking, Emma ran outside into the cold, not even stopping for a coat. "Cole!" She reached him just as he was trying to sit up, his face white with pain. His left arm was hanging at an odd angle, and there was blood on his temple where he'd hit the frozen ground. "I'm fine," he gasped, but he clearly wasn't. "Just need to—" He tried to stand and nearly collapsed. Emma caught him, her smaller frame somehow supporting his weight. "Stop being stupid. You're hurt. Can you walk to the house?" Between the two of them, they managed to get Cole inside. Emma helped him into a chair near the fire, then ran to get water and clean cloths. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. She'd nursed Thomas through injuries before. She could do this. "Your arm is dislocated," she said, after a careful examination that made Cole hiss with pain. "I can set it, but it's going to hurt." "You've done this before?" "Twice. Thomas fell from scaffolding in the mine." She didn't mention that both times. He'd been drunk and angry, making everything harder. "I need you to trust me." Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and nodded. "I trust you." Emma positioned herself, braced her foot against Cole's ribs the way the old doctor had shown her, and pulled. Cole's roar of pain made Bear howl from his place by the door, but she felt the shoulder pop back into place. "Done," she gasped, nearly as shaky as Cole looked. "The worst is over." She cleaned the wound on his head, which thankfully wasn't deep, just bloody the way scalp wounds always were. Then she fashioned a sling from a torn sheet and helped Cole get his arm into it. "You need to rest," she ordered. "No arguing. That shoulder needs time to heal properly, or it'll keep popping out." "Emma, I can't rest. There's animals to feed, water to haul. I'll do it." Cole started to protest, but Emma cut him off. "You saved my life, Cole Stanton. Now let me help save yours. Tell me what needs to be done, and I'll do it." For the next 3 days, Emma did everything. She fed the animals, hauled water from the well, chopped wood for the fire. Cole tried to help one-handed, but Emma refused to let him do anything beyond the lightest tasks. At night, she made him tea laced with willow bark for the pain and checked his shoulder for swelling. Noah was fussy with the disruption to routine, and Emma was exhausted, running on too little sleep and too much worry. But she kept going, determined to prove that she could carry her weight, that she was more than just someone who needed saving. On the 4th morning, Emma came in from feeding the chickens to find Cole sitting at the kitchen table looking devastated. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "Is your shoulder worse?" "My shoulder's fine." His voice was rough. "Emma, I can't do this." Her heart sank. This was it. He was sending her away. She'd been too much trouble, too much work. "I understand. I can pack our things." "What?" "No." Cole looked horrified. "That's not what I meant. I mean, I can't accept this. You doing all my work while I sit uselessly inside. You're paying me back by running yourself into the ground, and it's not right." Emma sank into the chair across from him. "Then what do you want?" "I want us to be partners," Cole said. "Not employer and housekeeper, real partners. You're keeping this ranch running right now when I can't. That's worth more than $10 a month and a bedroom. So I'm proposing we change the arrangement." "Change it how?" "This ranch is mine, but the work of running it should be shared equally. You do the house and the animals and whatever else needs doing. I'll do the heavy labor and the business side when I'm healed. We split everything down the middle, decisions, work, and profits when we sell cattle in the spring." Emma stared at him. "You want to make me a partner? In your ranch?" "I want to make this fair," Cole corrected. "You've earned it, Emma. These past few days prove that. You're strong and capable, and you deserve to be treated as such." "People will talk," Emma said slowly. "A single man and a widow living together, sharing ownership. Let them talk. I don't care what people think." Cole leaned forward. "Do you want this?" A real stake in something? A chance to build a future for Noah? Emma thought about the auction block, about Luther Vance's cruel eyes, about every moment of the past 6 weeks when she'd been helpless and desperate. Then she thought about the past 3 days, about the satisfaction of hard work done well, about the quiet pride she'd felt keeping the ranch running. "Yes," she said, "I want this." Cole extended his good hand across the table. "Partners, then." Emma shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. Partners. Neither of them noticed that outside the first subtle signs of spring were beginning to show, tiny shoots of green pushing up through the melting snow, promising that winter's grip was finally loosening. Inside the ranch house, 2 wounded people had found an unexpected alliance, built on honesty and mutual respect, and the simple recognition that everyone deserves a second chance. It was enough to build on, and for now, it was everything they needed. Spring came slowly to the Colorado Territory that year, fighting winter for every inch of ground. Emma watched the change from the ranch house windows while Noah played on a blanket near the fire, babbling to himself in the language only babies understood. Cole's shoulder had healed well over the past month, and he was back to full work, though Emma noticed he was more careful now, less likely to take unnecessary risks with the horses. Their partnership had settled into something comfortable. Emma handled the house, the garden she was planning for when the ground fully thawed, and the chickens that were finally laying regularly again. Cole managed the livestock, repaired winter damage to the buildings, and began the process of preparing for spring calving. They made decisions together over dinner, discussing which fields to use for grazing, whether to buy more breeding stock, how to allocate their limited funds. It was a good life. A simple life. Emma had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, stopped expecting Cole to reveal some hidden agenda. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a decent man trying to do right by someone he'd saved. That peaceful existence shattered on a Tuesday morning in early April. Emma was hanging laundry on the line, enjoying the weak sunshine and the sound of snowmelt dripping from the roof, when Bear started barking frantically. She looked up to see 3 riders approaching the ranch, moving at a deliberate pace that suggested they weren't friendly visitors. Cole emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. Emma saw him tense as he recognized whoever was coming. She quickly gathered the wet laundry back into the basket and moved toward the house, her instincts screaming danger. "Emma, take Noah inside," Cole called, his voice tight. "Lock the door." She didn't argue. She ran into the house, scooped up her son, and moved to the window where she could see what was happening. Her heart was pounding, all the old fears rushing back. Had someone from Ridgeway come for her? Was Luther Vance attempting to reclaim his property? The 3 riders stopped in front of Cole. The man in the center was well-dressed for the frontier, wearing a suit that had probably cost more than most ranchers made in a year. He was in his 40s, with a neatly trimmed beard and cold eyes. The 2 men flanking him were clearly hired muscle, rough-looking men with guns prominently displayed. Emma cracked the window open slightly so she could hear. "Cole Stanton," the well-dressed man said, his voice cultured and smooth. "I've been looking for you." "Braden Kells," Cole's voice was flat. "What do you want?" Emma's breath caught. She knew that name. Braden Kells was the man Silas Garrett had mentioned during the auction, the man who held Thomas's original debt claim before selling it. She thought that nightmare was over, paid for by Cole's $500, but apparently it wasn't. "I think you know what I want," Kells said pleasantly. "You took something that belongs to me." "Emma Rowland doesn't belong to anyone. She's a free woman working on my ranch." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong." Kells reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. "I have here a writ from Judge Blackwood in Denver. It states quite clearly that Emma Rowland owes a debt of $800 to the estate of Thomas Rowland, and as the primary creditor, I have legal claim to satisfaction of that debt through her labor." "That's illegal," Cole said. "You can't claim a person as payment for debt." "I'm not claiming a person, Mr. Stanton. I'm claiming the right to her labor until the debt is satisfied. There's precedent for it. Indentured servitude has a long tradition in the territories. The judge agreed with my interpretation of the law." Emma felt sick. $800. Where had that number come from? Thomas had barely made $800 in his entire time working the mines. "The debt was paid," Cole said. "I gave Silas Garrett $500 in Ridgeway." That was for Garrett's separate claim, which was considerably smaller. My debt stands, and according to this writ, Mrs. Rowland needs to come with me to work off what she owes. She's not going anywhere. Kells smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Then you're harboring someone who's legally bound to my service. That makes you guilty of theft, Mr. Stanton. Sheriff Monroe is aware of this situation. If I return to Ridgeway without Mrs. Rowland, he'll have no choice but to arrest you for kidnapping. Cole's hands clenched into fists. You're lying. Monroe wouldn't. Sheriff Monroe is a practical man who understands how the law works in the territories. He's seen the judge's writ, and he agrees it's legitimate. Kells's smile widened. You have 3 days to bring Mrs. Rowland to Ridgeway, or I'll return with the sheriff and armed deputies. And if you resist arrest, well, accidents happen during apprehensions. The threat was clear. Emma watched Cole's face, saw the fury there mixed with something that looked like fear. Not for himself, for her. What do you really want, Kells? Cole asked quietly. This isn't about debt collection. Men like you don't ride 8 miles into the mountains for $800. You're right, of course. Kells leaned back in his saddle, looking pleased with himself. I had a contract with Thomas Rowland. He was going to sell me information about a certain mining operation, geological surveys, production estimates, things that would be very valuable to the right buyer. He died before fulfilling his end of our arrangement, which means his widow inherited his obligations. Emma's mind reeled. Thomas had been selling mining information? To whom? And why? Emma doesn't know anything about mining operations, Cole said. Perhaps not, but she'll work in my household until I decide the debt is paid. I have several business ventures that could use someone with her particular skills. The way Kells said it made Emma's skin crawl. 3 days, Mr. Stanton. Bring her to Ridgeway or face the consequences. Without waiting for a response, Kells wheeled his horse around and rode off, his 2 hired guns following. They moved quickly, clearly not wanting to give Cole time to react violently. Emma watched them disappear down the trail, then ran to unlock the door. Cole stood in the yard, staring after the riders, his whole body rigid with tension. Cole, she called softly. He turned, and the expression on his face broke her heart. I won't let him take you. I don't care what some corrupt judge in Denver says. I won't let it happen. Emma came down the porch steps, still holding Noah. He said 3 days. What do we do? I don't know. Cole ran a hand through his hair, looking more frustrated than she'd ever seen him. That writ might actually be legal. The laws around debt and indentured servitude are murky in the territories. If Kells has a judge backing him, and if the sheriff believes it's legitimate, then I have to go. Emma's voice was steady, though inside she was screaming. I won't let you be arrested for helping me. I won't let you lose your ranch. Absolutely not. Cole's voice was fierce. Emma, you don't understand what Kells is. He's not some legitimate creditor. He's a criminal who uses the law as a weapon. If you go with him, I'll never see you again. Neither will Noah. Then what do we do? Emma heard the desperation in her own voice. We can't fight the law, Cole. You said yourself that resistance means they'll come with deputies, with guns. You could be killed. Cole was silent for a long moment, thinking hard. Then his eyes widened slightly, as if an idea had just occurred to him. There might be a way, he said slowly. It's drastic, and I won't do it unless you agree. But it would solve the problem legally, without anyone getting arrested or shot. What way? Cole looked at her, and Emma saw something complicated in his expression, hope mixed with fear, determination mixed with uncertainty. Marry me, he said. Emma felt the world tilt. What? Marry me. Right now, as soon as we can get a preacher here. If you're my wife, legally married, then Kells's claim becomes invalid. A married woman's debts transfer to her husband, but more importantly, he can't claim you for indentured servitude if you're legally bound to me through marriage. The law is clear on that. Spousal rights supersede debt claims. Emma stared at him, her mind racing. Marriage. To Cole. It would solve everything legally, but it would also complicate everything personally. You don't want to marry me, she said. This is too much, Cole. You've already given up so much. I'm not giving up anything. I'm gaining a partner I already trust, a woman I already respect, and a legal way to protect both of you from a man who'd destroy you. Cole stepped closer, his voice urgent. Emma, I'm not asking you to be a wife in the traditional sense. This would be a legal arrangement, a partnership formalized through marriage. Everything else stays the same, separate rooms, your independence, your share of the ranch. The only difference is a piece of paper that says you're Emma Stanton instead of Emma Rowland. And if I want more than that someday? Emma asked quietly. If I meet someone, or if you do? Cole's expression softened. Then we'll figure it out together, the same way we figure out everything else. But right now, in this moment, this is the best solution I can think of. Will you consider it? Emma looked down at Noah, who was watching her with wide, curious eyes. She thought about Braden Kells and his cold smile, about being dragged away to work off a debt she never agreed to, about what might happen to her son if she disappeared into Kells's custody. Then she thought about the past 2 months at the ranch, about the safety and respect Cole had shown her, about the partnership they'd built on honesty and mutual trust. If we do this, she said slowly, it has to be my choice. Not because I have no other options, but because I'm choosing this path. Choosing you as a partner. That's all I'm asking. A choice freely made. Emma took a deep breath. She thought about the auction block in Ridgeway, about standing there with no choices at all. Now standing in the yard of a ranch she partly owned, holding her healthy son, talking to a man who'd never lied to her, she had a choice. A real choice. Yes, she said, I'll marry you. Cole's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. I'll ride to Martha and James's place right now. Ask them to bring the circuit preacher. We need witnesses and someone who can legally perform the ceremony. How long will that take? If James rides hard, maybe they can be here by tomorrow evening. We'll do the ceremony immediately, get it witnessed and documented. By the time Kells comes back in 3 days, you'll be Emma Stanton, and his writ will be worthless. Cole went to saddle his horse, moving with fierce determination. Emma watched him go, then looked down at Noah. Your mama's getting married, she whispered to her son. To a good man who's trying to save us. I hope I'm making the right choice. Noah grabbed her finger and giggled, completely unconcerned with the monumental decision his mother had just made. Cole left within the hour, pushing his roan hard toward Martha and James's homestead. Emma spent the rest of the day in a daze, going through the motions of her chores while her mind spun with the implications of what she'd agreed to. Marriage to Cole. It made sense legally, practically, but emotionally. She didn't know what to feel. Relief, certainly, gratitude, but also fear because once they did this, there was no going back. She'd be bound to him in the eyes of the law and God, even if their private arrangement remained unchanged. Cole returned after dark, looking exhausted but satisfied. James is riding to fetch the preacher tonight. Martha's coming tomorrow morning to help you prepare. They'll bring everything we need for a proper ceremony. Cole, you don't have to make it proper. A simple exchange of vows in front of witnesses would be enough. No. His voice was firm. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. You deserve a real wedding, Emma. Not some rushed, shameful thing. A real ceremony with real vows, because even if this is a legal arrangement, it still matters. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. That night, Emma lay awake in her room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about Thomas. Her first wedding had been a hasty affair at a justice of the peace, with no family present and no celebration. Thomas had been excited about heading west, about the opportunities waiting in Colorado. He'd promised her adventure and prosperity. He'd given her hardship and debt instead, though she'd loved him anyway, or at least loved the man he'd been before the mines broke his spirit. Now she was marrying again, under completely different circumstances. This time she knew exactly what she was getting, a partnership, safety, respect. Maybe that was better than romance anyway. Safer, at least. She finally drifted off to sleep as the first hints of dawn were lightening the sky. Martha arrived mid-morning, riding up with her usual practical efficiency. She took one look at Emma's exhausted face and immediately took charge. All right, dear, first things first. You're going to take a proper bath, wash your hair, and put on something better than that work dress. I brought a few things that might fit you. Martha, this isn't a real wedding. It's just a legal arrangement. Hush. Martha's tone was gentle but firm. Every wedding is real if the vows are real. And I saw Cole's face yesterday when James told him we'd help. That man wasn't just solving a legal problem. He was protecting someone he cares about. So you're going to look like a bride, and we're going to do this properly because you both deserve that much." Emma let herself be fussed over, too tired to argue. Martha heated water for a bath, washed and braided Emma's hair, then presented her with a dress in soft blue wool, simple but well made, far nicer than anything Emma had worn in months. "It was mine when I was younger," Martha said, adjusting the fit. "I was about your size back then. Take it in a bit at the waist. There. Perfect." Emma looked at herself in the small mirror Cole kept in the washroom and barely recognized the woman staring back. Clean, rested, wearing a proper dress with her hair neatly styled, she looked almost like she had before Thomas died, before desperation had worn her down to nothing. "You're beautiful, dear," Martha said softly. "And you're stronger than you know. Remember that in the days ahead." The preacher arrived just before sunset, riding alongside James. He was an older man named Reverend Davies, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Emma at ease. "Mr. Stanton has explained the situation," he said, greeting Emma with a small bow. "I want you to know that I'm here because I believe in what you're doing. Marriage for protection is still marriage, and it's no less sacred than one born from romance. Are you entering this union willingly?" "Yes," Emma said, and meant it. "This is my choice." "Then let's begin." They gathered in the main room of the ranch house. Cole had changed into clean clothes and looked almost nervous, which was strange to see on a man usually so confident. Martha and James stood as witnesses. Noah was asleep in his cradle, blissfully unaware of the ceremony happening around him. Reverend Davies opened his Bible and began. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. This is not a union to be entered into lightly, but thoughtfully, with full understanding of the commitment being made." Emma listened to the familiar words, feeling the weight of them settle over her like a cloak. When it came time for vows, she and Cole turned to face each other. "Cole Stanton, do you take Emma Rowland to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" Cole's eyes met Emma's, steady and sure. "I do." "Emma Rowland, do you take Cole Stanton to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live?" Emma thought about the auction block, about the cradle Cole had built, about the partnership they'd forged over 2 months of shared work and growing trust. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. May God bless this union and keep you both in His grace." There was no kiss. Emma and Cole had silently agreed on that beforehand. Instead, they shook hands solemnly, sealing their partnership the same way they'd sealed their business arrangement weeks ago. Martha was crying happy tears. James clapped Cole on the shoulder. Reverend Davies produced the marriage certificate and had everyone sign it, creating the legal proof they'd need when Kells returned. "It's done," Cole said quietly, looking at the signed document. "You're Emma Stanton now. Legally, officially. Kells can't touch you." Emma stared at her new name written in the Reverend's careful script. Emma Stanton. It looked strange, but also somehow right. Martha had brought food, and they celebrated with a simple meal: roasted chicken, fresh bread, and even a small cake she'd somehow managed to bake and transport. It was oddly festive for a marriage born from desperation, but Emma found herself grateful for the normalcy of it, for Martha and James's kindness in making this feel like a real wedding. When the guests finally left, promising to return if they were needed when Kells came back, Emma and Cole stood alone in the suddenly quiet house. "Nothing has to change," Cole said. "Your room is still your room. Everything we agreed to before still stands." "I know." Emma looked at her hand, at the simple gold band Cole had produced for the ceremony, another thing he'd somehow arranged, probably borrowing it from Martha. "Cole, I want you to know something. I'm grateful for what you've done, but I also want you to understand that I'm not afraid anymore. When Kells comes back, I'll face him, not as cargo or property, but as your wife. as a woman who made her own choice. Cole smiled, and it transformed his normally serious face. Good, because we're going to need that strength when he arrives. They didn't have to wait long. Kells returned exactly 3 days later, just as he'd promised, but this time he brought Sheriff Monroe and 2 additional deputies. Emma watched them ride up from the window, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. "Ready?" Cole asked, coming to stand beside her. "Ready." They walked out onto the porch together, standing side by side. Emma held Noah on her hip, the baby's weight a comforting reminder of why she was doing this. Kells dismounted, his expression confident. Sheriff Monroe stayed on his horse, looking uncomfortable. He was a weathered man in his 50s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much frontier justice. "Mr. Stanton," Kells said pleasantly, "I believe we had an agreement. 3 days to bring Mrs. Rowland to Ridgeway, or face arrest for kidnapping. Since you're both still here, I'm forced to assume you've chosen arrest." "Actually," Cole said calmly, "there's been a development you should know about. Emma isn't Mrs. Rowland anymore. She's Mrs. Stanton, my wife. We were married 4 days ago in front of witnesses, performed by Reverend Davies and properly documented." He produced the marriage certificate, holding it out. Sheriff Monroe dismounted and took it, examining it carefully. The color drained from Kells's face, replaced by red fury. "You can't do that. The debt claim is invalid," Cole interrupted. "As Sheriff Monroe can confirm, a married woman's debts transfer to her husband, but more importantly, you can't claim indentured servitude against a married woman without her husband's consent. Which you'll never have." Sheriff Monroe looked up from the certificate, then at Kells. "He's right. This marriage is legal and properly witnessed. Your writ doesn't mean anything now, Kells. Mrs. Stanton," he nodded respectfully at Emma, "is under her husband's protection. Her debts, if they're even legitimate, are his responsibility now." "This is fraud." Kells's composure had shattered completely. "They only got married to circumvent my legal claim. People get married for lots of reasons," the sheriff said dryly. "The law doesn't require love, just consent and proper documentation. This marriage meets all legal requirements." He handed the certificate back to Cole. "I'm sorry for the trouble, Mr. Stanton, Mrs. Stanton. Kells, we're done here." "I'm not done," Kells snarled. He turned to Emma, his face twisted with rage. "You think this is over? You think a piece of paper protects you? Your husband Thomas made promises, and I will collect—" "Thomas is dead," Emma said clearly, stepping forward. "Whatever arrangement you had with him died with him. I owe you nothing. I chose to marry Cole Stanton, and I chose to stand here as his wife and partner. You have no claim on me, no power over me. Go back to whatever hole you crawled out of and leave us alone." She'd never spoken to a man like that before, with strength, with certainty, with absolute refusal to be intimidated. It felt liberating. Kells looked at her with pure hatred, but the sheriff and his deputies were there, and he knew he'd lost. "This isn't finished," he said quietly, dangerously. "The debt was $800. I want my money." "Fine," Cole said. "Name your bank in Denver. I'll have $800 transferred within the week. Consider Thomas Rowland's debt paid in full." Emma gasped. "Cole, no! You've already spent $500 on me. You can't—" "I can, and I will." Cole's voice was firm. "This ends now, Kells. You get your money, you sign a document stating the debt is satisfied, and you never contact my wife again. That's the deal. Take it or leave it." Kells clearly wanted to refuse, wanted to drag this out, to cause more pain. But he was a businessman at heart, and $800 was $800. "Paid in full by week's end," he said finally, "with a signed release of all claims. If the money isn't there, I'll be back with a lien against this ranch." "It'll be there." Kells remounted his horse, his face still twisted with fury. "You're a fool, Stanton, spending a fortune on a widow with a bastard child. She'll bleed you dry." Cole's hand moved to his gun, and for a moment Emma thought he might actually shoot Kells, but he controlled himself, his voice deadly calm. "Get off my land. Now." Kells left, his hired guns trailing behind him. Sheriff Monroe tipped his hat to Emma. "Ma'am, congratulations on your marriage. I hope this is the end of your troubles." "Thank you, Sheriff." When they were finally alone, Emma sank down onto the porch steps, her legs suddenly weak. Cole sat beside her, and they watched the dust settle on the road where Kells and his party had disappeared. $800, Emma whispered. Cole, that's everything. Your savings, your plans for expanding the herd. I'll rebuild. We'll rebuild together. Cole looked at her, his expression serious. Emma, I need you to understand something. I didn't marry you out of obligation or to solve a problem. I married you because you're the best partner I could ask for, and because I'll be damned if I let men like Kells destroy good people. That money isn't a sacrifice. It's an investment in our future. Our future, Emma repeated. The words sounded strange, but also right. We really did this. We're married. We really did. Cole stood and offered her his hand. Come on, Mrs. Stanton. We've got a ranch to run and a fortune to rebuild. Might as well get started. Emma took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Noah babbled happily in her arms, reaching for Cole with chubby fingers. Cole took the baby, settling him on his hip with the ease of someone who'd gotten used to the weight. They walked back into the house together, husband, wife, and child, to face whatever came next. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Spring was here, bringing new life to the land and new possibilities to people who'd survived winter's worst. And in the ranch house at the end of the mountain trail, two people who'd saved each other began to discover that legal arrangements and marriages of convenience sometimes became the foundation for something far deeper and more enduring than either had dared to hope. The week that followed the confrontation with Kells was strangely quiet, as if the ranch itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next crisis. Cole rode to Ridgeway twice, once to arrange the bank transfer through the territorial office, and again 3 days later to ensure the money had been properly sent to Denver and to obtain the signed release document from Kells's representative. He returned from the second trip looking exhausted but satisfied, carrying a legal paper that declared all debts of Thomas Rowland paid in full and released Emma from any further obligation. It's done, he said, setting the document on the kitchen table where Emma was kneading bread. Kells can't touch you now. The marriage certificate and this release together make you completely free. Emma's hands stilled in the dough. Free, she repeated softly. The word felt foreign on her tongue. She'd been running from one form of bondage to another for so long that the concept of actual freedom seemed impossible. You are, Cole insisted, legally, financially, completely free. You're my wife in the eyes of the law, which means you have protection. But you're also a partner in this ranch with your own rights. If you wanted to leave tomorrow, you could. I wouldn't stop you. Emma looked at him, at this man who kept giving her choices when most men would have demanded obedience. I'm not leaving. I know, but I need you to know you could. That's what freedom means. That night, Emma lay in her bed, in her room with the door she'd never once needed to lock, and cried. Not from sadness or fear, but from relief so profound it felt like physical pain releasing from her body. She was safe. Noah was safe. They had a home, a future, and a partner who treated her like an equal human being instead of property. The next morning, she woke with a new sense of purpose. If she was truly free, truly a partner, then she needed to start acting like one. She'd been so focused on survival, on just getting through each day, that she hadn't allowed herself to think about building something permanent. That changed now. Over breakfast, Emma spread out a piece of paper she'd been sketching on. I've been thinking about the garden, she said. If we plant it right, we could grow enough vegetables to last through next winter, maybe even have surplus to sell in town. And I was looking at that south-facing slope behind the barn. That would be perfect for fruit trees. Apple, maybe pear. They'd take years to mature, but eventually... Cole leaned over to study her drawings, his expression interested. This is good planning. The garden makes sense immediately, and you're right about the slope. I was thinking about expansion too, but in a different direction. He pulled out his own paper, covered in numbers and calculations. If we're careful this year, save everything we can, we could buy breeding stock in the fall. Start rebuilding the herd properly, not just maintenance level. They spent the morning planning, their ideas building on each other. Emma suggested chickens for eggs to sell. Cole countered with the possibility of pigs, harder to manage but profitable if done right. Emma worried about the initial investment. Cole showed her his calculations, proving they could afford it if they were strategic. It felt like a real partnership, two minds working together toward a common goal. Emma found herself smiling more than she had in months, energized by the possibility of building instead of just surviving. Noah interrupted their planning by waking from his nap and demanding attention with lusty cries. Emma went to get him, but when she returned, Cole was still studying her garden sketches. "You're good at this," he said, looking up. "Planning, organizing, seeing what's possible." Thomas was a fool not to recognize that. Emma settled Noah on her hip, surprised by the compliment. "Thomas saw me as a wife, not a partner. There's a difference." "There is," Cole agreed. "And I'm grateful every day that you're willing to be both." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to examine. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks and busied herself with getting Noah settled at the table with some bread to gnaw on. Spring deepened into early summer, and the ranch came alive with activity. Emma planted her garden with seeds Martha had given her, spending hours in the dirt coaxing life from the soil. Cole worked from dawn to dusk repairing fences, clearing irrigation channels, and preparing for the eventual arrival of new livestock. They fell into an easy rhythm, working separately but toward the same goals, coming together at meals to discuss progress and problems. Noah grew bigger and stronger, learning to pull himself up on furniture and babbling constantly in his baby language. He adored Cole, reaching for him whenever the rancher came into view, which never failed to bring a soft smile to Cole's usually serious face. "He thinks you're his father," Emma said one evening, watching Cole bounce Noah on his knee while they sat on the porch, enjoying the cool air after a hot day. Cole's hands stilled. "Does that bother you?" "No," Emma said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Thomas never got to know him like this. He died before Noah was old enough to recognize him. In a way, you're more of a father to him than Thomas ever had the chance to be. I don't want to replace—" "You're not replacing anyone. You're just being who you are. That's enough." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the mountains in shades of orange and purple. Emma felt something shift inside her, some wall she'd been maintaining starting to crack. She'd been so careful to keep this arrangement purely practical, to not let herself feel anything deeper than gratitude and respect for Cole. But watching him with her son, seeing the gentleness in his strong hands, the patience in his voice, she felt something more complicated beginning to grow. It terrified her. The peace lasted until mid-June, when James arrived unexpectedly one morning, riding hard and looking worried. "Cole, Emma, we've got a problem," he said, dismounting quickly. "Word in town is that Kells isn't done with you. He's been asking questions about the ranch, about your finances, about whether you really had the money you sent to Denver." Emma felt ice settle in her stomach. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest he's looking for a way to challenge the payment or the debt release. He's claiming now that there were additional costs, fees that weren't included in the original $800. He's talking about filing a lien against the ranch." Cole's face hardened. "He can't do that. We have a signed release stating the debt is paid in full." "I'm just telling you what I heard. The man's got connections in Denver, Cole. Judges, politicians. If he wants to make trouble, he can make a lot of it." Emma sank into a porch chair, holding Noah tightly. "This will never end, will it? He'll keep coming back, keep inventing new claims, until he destroys us." "Not if we fight back," Cole said firmly. "James, thank you for the warning. I'll ride to Ridgeway tomorrow, talk to Sheriff Monroe, see what legal standing Kells actually has." But before Cole could make that trip, Kells himself arrived the next afternoon, and this time he brought a document that made Emma's blood run cold. "A lien notice," Kells announced, clearly enjoying himself as he handed the paper to Cole. "Filed officially with the territorial court in Denver. You owe an additional $300 in administrative fees related to the debt collection process. Payment is due within 30 days, or this ranch becomes property of my estate to satisfy the claim." Cole read the document, his jaw clenching tighter with each line. "This is fraud. These fees are fabricated. They're perfectly legitimate costs associated with pursuing the debt claim. Legal research, travel expenses, document preparation, it all adds up. You should have read the fine print before you paid, Mr. Stanton." "There was no fine print. You agreed to $800 in full settlement." "I agreed to accept $800 toward the primary debt. The ancillary fees were always separate." Kells smiled, and it was the expression of a predator toying with prey. "Of course, if you can't pay, I'm willing to negotiate alternative arrangements. Perhaps Mrs. Stanton would consider working off the debt, after all. Cole moved so fast Emma barely saw it. One moment he was standing on the porch. The next he had Kells by the collar, slamming him against the porch railing. "You don't speak to my wife," Cole growled, his voice deadly quiet. "You don't look at her. You don't mention her name. You want money? Fine. But Emma is off the table permanently. Understand?" Kells' face was red, but he managed a strangled laugh. "You don't have the money, do you? You spent everything on the first payment. You're broke, and now you're going to lose everything trying to protect a woman who isn't worth—" Cole's fist connected with Kells' jaw before the man could finish the sentence. Kells went down hard, blood streaming from his split lip. "Cole, stop!" Emma grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "He's not worth it. If you assault him, he'll have you arrested. That's probably what he wants." Cole was shaking with rage, but he let Emma pull him away. Kells climbed slowly to his feet, wiping blood from his mouth. "That was assault, Stanton. I have witnesses." "You have nothing," Emma said coldly, stepping in front of Cole. "You came onto our property, making threats and demands. My husband defended his home. Now leave, before we send for the sheriff ourselves and have you charged with trespassing and extortion." Kells' eyes narrowed. "You've got 30 days. Come up with $300, or this ranch is mine." He remounted his horse, swaying slightly. "I'll enjoy watching you lose everything." He rode off, leaving Emma and Cole standing in the yard. Cole's hands were still clenched into fists, his breathing ragged. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I shouldn't have hit him. That was stupid." "That was human," Emma corrected. "He was trying to provoke you, and it worked. But Cole, what are we going to do? Do we have $300? Cole's silence was answer enough. "How much do we have?" Emma pressed. "Maybe $60 cash, some equipment I could sell, but that would cripple the ranch operations. The horses—" He shook his head. "I'd have to sell almost all of them, including the breeding stock. Even then, I don't know if I could raise 300 in 30 days. Emma felt panic rising but forced it down. She'd survived worse than this. She'd find a way. "What about a loan? Could we borrow the money?" "From who? The bank in Ridgeway won't lend to me. I already owe them money for equipment I bought last year. I could ask James and Martha, but they don't have that kind of cash. They're barely making it themselves." They went inside and spent the evening going over every possible option. Emma suggested selling her wedding ring, but it was worth maybe $10 at most. Cole proposed working extra jobs in town, but that would take months to earn enough, and they only had 30 days. They could sell the pigs before they were properly fattened, but that would bring in maybe $40, not nearly enough. By nightfall, they were no closer to a solution, and the weight of impending disaster hung over the house like a storm cloud. Emma put Noah to bed, singing softly to him until he fell asleep, then returned to find Cole sitting at the table, staring at the lien notice with hollow eyes. "I'm going to lose the ranch," he said quietly. "Everything I've built for 5 years, gone, because I tried to save you." "Don't," Emma said sharply. "Don't you dare blame me for this. Kells is a criminal who's manipulating the law. This isn't my fault, and it's not yours either." "But it is my fault. I knew paying that $800 would leave us vulnerable. I did it anyway because I was so focused on protecting you that I didn't think about the consequences." Emma sat down across from him, reaching out to take his hands. "Cole Stanton, you listened to me. You saved my life. You gave me and my son a home, a future, hope. If we lose the ranch, we'll find another way. We'll start over somewhere else. But I will not let you regret helping me." Cole looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. "How are you so strong? You've been through hell, and you're still the one holding me together." "Because you held me together when I needed it. That's what partners do." They sat like that for a long moment, drawing strength from each other. Then Cole straightened his shoulders, and Emma saw determination replace despair in his eyes. "There might be one option," he said slowly. "It's risky, and I hate it, but it might work." "What option?" "There's a man in Denver, Alexander Pruitt. He's a wealthy investor, buys up struggling ranches and mining operations. He approached me last year about buying this place, offered a fair price too. I turned him down because I wanted to keep building something of my own. But if I sold to him now, I could pay off Kells and have enough left over to start fresh somewhere else." Emma felt her heart sink. "You'd sell your ranch?" Cole, this is your dream. You've put everything into this place. And I'd do it again if it meant keeping you and Noah safe. Emma, the ranch is just land and buildings. It can be rebuilt. But if Kells wins this lien claim, we get nothing. He takes everything, and we're left destitute. At least this way, we'd have some capital to start over. Where would we go? Wyoming, maybe, Montana. Somewhere Kells doesn't have influence, where we could buy cheap land and begin again. Emma thought about leaving this place, this home where she'd finally found safety. The garden she'd planted with such hope. The bedroom where Noah had learned to pull himself up. The kitchen where she and Cole had planned their future together. But she also thought about being free of Kells forever, about the possibility of truly starting fresh. If that's what you think is best, she said slowly, then we'll do it. We'll sell, we'll leave, and we'll start over, together. Cole squeezed her hands. Together, he echoed. I'll ride to Denver tomorrow, talk to Pruitt, see if his offer still stands. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She paced her room, Noah sleeping peacefully in his cradle, and tried to imagine a future somewhere else. But every vision felt wrong, incomplete. This ranch had become home in a way she hadn't fully realized until faced with losing it. She was standing at her window, looking out at the moonlit mountains, when she heard a soft knock on her door. Emma? Can we talk? She opened the door to find Cole standing in the hallway, looking as sleepless as she felt. I can't do it, he said without preamble. I've been lying in bed trying to convince myself that selling is the right move, but I can't. This ranch isn't just land to me. It's where I rebuilt myself after Sarah died. It's where I found purpose again. It's where we became partners. I can't sell it to Kells's benefit. I can't let him win. Then we fight, Emma said firmly. We find another way. There is no other way. We don't have the money, and we can't raise it in time. Emma's mind was racing, thinking through every possibility. Then an idea struck her, so simple she almost laughed. What if we don't need to raise the money? She said slowly. What if we just need to prove Kells's lien is fraudulent? Cole frowned. How would we prove that? He's got official paperwork from Denver. Paperwork can be forged, and even if it's real, those fees have to be documented somewhere. What if we went to Denver ourselves, looked at the official court records, found proof that his fees are inflated or fabricated? That would take time we don't have, and even if we found proof, who would we show it to? The judges in Denver are probably in Kells's pocket. Then we go higher. Territorial governor, royal, federal marshal, someone who isn't corrupted by Kells's influence. Emma grabbed Cole's arm, excitement building. Cole, we can't just roll over and let him take everything. We have to fight back, really fight back. Cole studied her face, and slowly, hope began to kindle in his eyes. It's a long shot. Everything about our situation has been a long shot. We've beaten the odds before. If we try this and fail, we won't have time to arrange a sale. We'll lose everything. Then we'll lose everything fighting, but at least we'll know we didn't give up. Cole pulled Emma into a sudden, fierce embrace. She stiffened in surprise. This was the first time he'd touched her beyond helping her mount a horse or steadying her arm. But then she relaxed into it, wrapping her arms around him and holding on just as tightly. Thank you, he murmured into her hair, for reminding me who I am. They stood like that for a long moment, taking comfort in each other's presence. When they finally pulled apart, Emma felt something fundamental had shifted between them. They were still partners, still bound by practical arrangement, but there was something deeper now, something that felt dangerously close to the kind of bond real married couples shared. We leave for Denver tomorrow, Cole said. Both of us. We'll bring Noah, close up the ranch for a few days. James can watch the animals. We do this together. Together, Emma agreed. They spent the rest of the night planning, fueled by hope and determination. By the time the sun rose, they had a strategy. They would go to Denver, search the court records for any irregularities in Kell's claim, find witnesses who could testify to his corrupt practices, and bring their evidence to the territorial governor himself if necessary. It was ambitious. It was probably impossible, but it was better than surrender. James arrived at noon in response to Cole's urgent message and immediately agreed to watch the ranch. You go fight for what's yours, he said, gripping Cole's shoulder. Martha and I will hold down the fort here. Emma packed quickly, gathering supplies for the journey and ensuring Noah had everything he needed. She also packed the marriage certificate and the debt release document, proof of their legitimate claim to be free of Kels's harassment. They left that afternoon, riding hard for Denver. Emma had never been to the territorial capital, and as they approached the city 3 days later, she was awed by its size. Ridgeway was a rough frontier town of maybe 200 people. Denver was a real city with thousands of residents, brick buildings, paved streets, and the bustle of serious commerce. Cole found them a modest hotel near the courthouse and paid for 2 rooms, maintaining their separate sleeping arrangements even here. That night, after Noah was asleep and they'd eaten a quick meal, they sat in Emma's room planning their next move. "Tomorrow we start at the courthouse," Cole said. "We look at the official filing for Kels's lien, see what documentation he provided. If there's anything questionable, we make copies and find a lawyer willing to challenge it. And if everything looks legitimate on paper, then we dig deeper. Talk to court clerks, find out who Kels paid off, look for any pattern of corruption we can expose." Emma nodded, trying to feel confident, but sitting in this unfamiliar city, so far from the ranch that had become home, she felt very small and very vulnerable. Cole seemed to sense her mood. "Emma, whatever happens, we did this together. That matters." "Does it? If we lose the ranch, if Kels wins, then we start over and we do it as partners, as husband and wife, as a family." Cole reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "I need you to know something. This started as a legal arrangement, a way to protect you. But somewhere along the way, it became real for me. You're not just my partner on paper anymore. You're my partner in every way that matters." Emma's breath caught. "Cole, I'm not asking for anything to change," he said quickly. "I'm just telling you the truth. Whatever happens tomorrow, I wanted you to know that." Emma looked at their joined hands, at this man who'd saved her, protected her, treated her with more respect and kindness than anyone in her life. And she realized that somewhere along the way, it had become real for her too. This wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was something deeper, something that made her heart race and her future feel intertwined with his in ways that had nothing to do with legal documents. "It's real for me too," she whispered. Cole's eyes widened, and for a moment, Emma thought he might kiss her. She realized she wanted him to, but instead he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then we fight for our future," he said. "Together." The next morning, they walked into the Denver courthouse ready for battle, not knowing that the fight they were about to wage would change everything, not just their legal situation, but the very foundation of their relationship and what their marriage truly meant. The Denver courthouse was an imposing stone building that seemed designed to intimidate anyone who entered seeking justice. Emma climbed the steps with Noah on her hip and Cole at her side, trying to project confidence she didn't quite feel. Inside, the marble floors echoed with their footsteps, and clerks moved between offices carrying stacks of legal documents that represented people's entire futures reduced to paperwork. Cole approached the main desk where a middle-aged woman with spectacles sat reviewing files. "We need to examine the official records for a lien filing," he said politely. "Case number would be..." He consulted the document Kels had provided, reading off the numbers. The clerk looked up, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. "Lien cases are public record. 3rd floor, records office. They'll help you there." They climbed 2 more flights of stairs, Emma's arms aching from Noah's weight by the time they reached the records office. This room was smaller, cramped with filing cabinets, and staffed by a young man who looked barely old enough to shave. "Help you folks?" he asked, not looking up from the ledger he was updating. "We need to see the complete file for this lien case," Cole said, handing over Kels's document. The clerk finally looked up, and Emma saw his eyes widen slightly when he read the case number. "That's one of Judge Blackwood's cases. Let me check if it's available for public viewing." He disappeared into the back room, and Cole and Emma exchanged a worried glance. Why wouldn't it be available for public viewing if it was supposedly public record? The clerk returned 15 minutes later with a thin folder. "Here you go. You can review it at that table over there. No removing any documents, and I need to witness if you want copies made." Cole took the folder, and they settled at a scarred wooden table in the corner. Emma bounced Noah on her knee while Cole opened the file and began reading. His expression grew darker with each page. "What is it?" Emma asked quietly. "These fees," Cole said, his voice tight. Administrative costs of $250. Legal research fees of $30. Document preparation of $20. Emma, these are standard court costs that are supposed to be paid by the person filing the claim, not added to the debt. So Kells is trying to make us pay his legal fees? Exactly. And look at this. Cole pointed to a signature at the bottom of one form. This is supposed to be Judge Blackwood's signature authorizing the lien, but I've seen Blackwood's signature on other documents. This doesn't match. Emma leaned closer, studying the signature. Even to her untrained eye, it looked shaky, uncertain. Could it be a forgery? Maybe. Or maybe Blackwood signed it without really reading it, rubber stamping whatever Kells put in front of him. Cole sat back, thinking hard. We need to compare this to other documents Blackwood has signed, and we need to find out if these fees are actually legitimate under territorial law. How do we do that? We need a lawyer, a real one, not someone in Kells's pocket. They left the courthouse and spent the rest of the morning visiting law offices. The first 3 attorneys they consulted took one look at the case number, saw Judge Blackwood's name, and politely declined to help. The fourth was more blunt. "You're asking me to challenge a sitting judge's ruling," the lawyer said flatly. "That's career suicide in this territory. Find someone else." Emma felt despair creeping back in, but Cole's jaw was set with determination. There has to be someone willing to stand up to corruption. "There is," said a voice from the doorway. They turned to see an older gentleman in a slightly shabby suit standing there, having apparently overheard their conversation. "Though I'd hardly call myself someone, more like the last resort." He extended his hand. "Robert Cartwright, attorney at law. I heard you mention Blackwood and Braden Kells. That combination tells me everything I need to know about your situation." Cole shook his hand warily. "You know Kells?" "Know him? I've been trying to build a case against him for 2 years. The man's a criminal who hides behind legal technicalities and bought judges. If you've got evidence of fraud in one of his lien claims, I'm very interested in seeing it." They followed Cartwright to his office, which was small and cluttered with law books and case files. He listened intently as Cole explained their situation, occasionally making notes, his expression growing more animated as the story progressed. "This is exactly the pattern I've been tracking," Cartwright said when Cole finished. "Kells finds desperate people, usually widows or struggling businesses, and uses fabricated debts to either extort money or seize property. He's done it at least a dozen times in the past 3 years, always with Blackwood's approval. The problem is getting anyone to challenge it officially." "Why hasn't anyone challenged it before?" Emma asked. "Because most of his victims don't have the resources to fight back. They either pay whatever he demands or lose everything and leave the territory. You're the first people I've met who are both willing and able to stand up to him." "Able might be an overstatement," Cole said dryly. "We've got maybe 20 days left before the lien becomes enforceable, and no money to pay, even if the fees are legitimate." Cartwright leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Here's what we do. We file a motion to dismiss the lien based on fraudulent fee assessment. We request a full audit of Blackwood's cases involving Kells to establish a pattern of corruption. And we take this directly to the territorial governor with a formal complaint about judicial misconduct." "Will that work?" Emma asked. "Honestly, I don't know. But it'll buy us time, and it'll put Kells and Blackwood on notice that you're not going quietly. At minimum, it'll make them think twice about pushing forward." "What's your fee for this?" Cole asked. "We don't have much cash available." Cartwright waved a hand dismissively. "If we win, you pay me a percentage of whatever we save. If we lose, you owe me nothing but the satisfaction of finally getting a real fight against these bastards. Fair enough?" Cole extended his hand. "More than fair. When do we start?" "Right now. I'll draft the motion to dismiss tonight. Tomorrow we file it and request an emergency hearing. You two need to gather every piece of documentation you have. Your marriage certificate, the original debt release, any correspondence with Kells, everything. We build an airtight case showing this is harassment and fraud, not legitimate debt collection." They spent the next 3 days in a whirlwind of legal preparation. Cartwright worked tirelessly, drafting motions and affidavits. Emma and Cole provided every detail they could remember, every document they possessed. Cartwright even tracked down 2 other families who'd been victimized by Kells and convinced them to provide sworn statements about similar fraudulent fee assessments. On the 4th day, They stood before a different judge, Judge Sarah Harrison, who Cartwright assured them was honest and not in anyone's pocket. The courtroom was small, and Kells was there with his own attorney, looking supremely confident. That confidence began to crack as Cartwright presented his case. "Your Honor, the evidence shows a clear pattern of fraud," Cartwright argued, laying out document after document. "Mr. Kells has used fabricated administrative fees to extort money from vulnerable people across this territory. In Mrs. Stanton's case, he's attempting to charge her $300 for costs that are normally borne by the plaintiff in a lien action. Furthermore, we have evidence suggesting Judge Blackwood's signature on the lien authorization may have been obtained under false pretenses or without proper review." Kells's attorney objected strenuously, but Judge Harrison silenced him with a raised hand. She studied the documents carefully, her expression growing sterner with each page. "Mr. Kells," she said finally, "can you provide itemized receipts for these administrative costs you're claiming?" Kells shifted uncomfortably. "The costs are estimated based on standard legal practices. That's not what I asked. Do you have actual receipts proving you incurred these expenses?" "Well, no, but then on what basis are you claiming Mrs. Stanton owes them?" "It's standard practice in debt collection to recover legal costs. It's standard practice to prove those costs were actually incurred," Judge Harrison said sharply. "Mr. Cartwright, I'm inclined to agree with your assessment. This lien appears to be based on fabricated fees with no supporting documentation." Emma felt Cole's hand find hers under the table, squeezing tightly. "However," Judge Harrison continued, and Emma's heart sank, "the original debt of $800 was apparently paid in full, and Mr. Kells signed a release. Mr. Kells, why are we even here if the primary debt was satisfied?" Kells's attorney jumped in. "Your Honor, the release only covered the primary debt. The administrative fees were a separate matter, clearly outlined in the original agreement. Show me this original agreement." There was a long, telling pause. Kells's attorney shuffled through his papers, looking increasingly nervous. "We don't have the original with us today, but it's on file." "Where?" "In whose office? Under what case number?" Judge Harrison's patience was clearly wearing thin. More silence. "I thought so," the judge said. "Mr. Kells, this court does not appreciate attempts to use the legal system for harassment and extortion. The lien against the Stanton property is hereby dismissed with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the Territorial Attorney General's office for investigation into possible fraud and judicial corruption." She banged her gavel. "This hearing is concluded. Mr. and Mrs. Stanton, you're free to go. Mr. Kells, I suggest you consult with your attorney about your legal exposure going forward." Emma couldn't breathe. They'd won. Actually won. Cole stood, pulling her up with him, and she realized she was shaking. Cartwright was grinning broadly, gathering his papers. Across the room, Kells looked like he'd been punched, his face white with fury and fear. As they filed out of the courtroom, Kells intercepted them in the hallway. "This isn't over," he hissed. "I'll appeal. I'll find another way." "No, you won't," Cartwright said pleasantly. "Because if you come near my clients again, I'll file harassment charges. And now that Judge Harrison has referred your activities to the Attorney General, you're going to be too busy defending yourself to bother anyone else." Kells looked between them, clearly wanting to make more threats, but aware that too many witnesses were present. Finally, he spun on his heel and stalked away, his attorney hurrying after him. Emma waited until they were outside the courthouse, breathing in the fresh air of a Denver afternoon, before she let herself believe it. "We won," she said wonderingly. "We actually won." "You won," Cartwright corrected. "You two fought back when most people would have given up. That took courage." He handed Cole a card. "If Kells tries anything else, and I mean anything, you contact me immediately. In the meantime, I'll follow up with the Attorney General's office. Make sure they take this seriously." They thanked him profusely, and Cole insisted on paying him something despite Cartwright's protests. Finally, they compromised on a modest fee that wouldn't strain their finances and parted ways with promises to stay in touch. That night, back at the hotel, Emma felt giddy with relief. She put Noah to bed, then joined Cole in the small sitting area between their rooms. He'd ordered dinner sent up, along with a bottle of wine to celebrate. "To victory," he said, raising his glass. "To partnership," Emma countered, clinking her glass against his. "We did this together." They ate and talked, rehashing the hearing, marveling at Judge Harrison's swift justice, laughing about the look on Kells's face when his fraud was exposed. The wine made Emma feel warm and loose, more relaxed than she'd been in months. "Cole," she said eventually, setting down her glass, "earlier you said something became real for you, that I wasn't just your partner on paper anymore." Cole's expression grew serious. "I meant that. I need you to know it's real for me too. This marriage started as a legal protection, but somewhere along the way," she paused, trying to find the right words, "somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of you as the man who saved me and started thinking of you as the man I want to build a life with." Cole set down his own glass and moved closer to her on the small sofa. "Emma, I don't want to rush you or pressure you. I know you've been through hell, and I know trust doesn't come easy after what you've experienced." "I trust you," Emma said firmly. "I've trusted you since the night you built a cradle for my son. I've trusted you since you gave me a locked door and never tried to open it. I trust you, Cole Stanton, more than I've ever trusted anyone." "Then what do you want?" Cole asked softly. "From this marriage, from me, from our future." Emma took a deep breath. "I want it to be real, not just on paper, but in every way. I want to be your wife, your true partner. I want Noah to grow up knowing you as his father. I want to build that ranch together, plant that garden, raise those cattle. I want a life with you, Cole, a real life." Cole's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "I want that too, more than I knew how to say." When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, asking permission, offering her the chance to pull away. But Emma leaned into it, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders, kissing him back with all the emotion she'd been holding inside for months. This was different from Thomas's kisses. There was no desperation here, no sense of grasping at something before it disappeared. This was solid, real, built on months of shared work and growing affection and the bone-deep knowledge that they'd chosen each other freely. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly, give you time to be sure." "I am sure," Emma interrupted. "I've been sure for weeks, I just didn't let myself admit it. Cole, I don't need courting. I need you." "Emma," his voice was rough with emotion and desire. "I'm your wife," she said firmly, "in the eyes of God and the law and everyone who matters. I want to be your wife in truth too, unless you don't want." Cole kissed her again, deeper this time, pulling her close. "I want," he murmured against her lips. "I've wanted since the day you nursed me through that shoulder injury, and I realized I couldn't imagine my life without you in it." They stayed up late that night, talking and kissing, planning a future that was finally, truly theirs. They would go home to the ranch, free of Kells's threats. They would build the life they'd been planning, but now as true partners in every sense. They would be a family, not one forced by circumstance, but one chosen with open eyes and full hearts. The next morning, they began the journey back to the ranch. Emma rode beside Cole instead of behind him, Noah secured in a sling against her chest, and the whole world felt different, brighter, full of possibility. When they finally crested the last hill and saw the ranch spread out below them, Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. Home, their home, safe and secure and waiting for them. James and Martha came running out to meet them, having clearly been watching for their return. Emma and Cole took turns explaining what had happened in Denver, and Martha cried happy tears while James clapped Cole on the back and declared he'd never doubted they'd win. "Also," Martha said with a knowing smile, looking between Emma and Cole, "something else happened in Denver, didn't it? You two look different." Emma felt herself blush but didn't deny it. "We decided to make our marriage real, in every way." Martha's smile widened. "About time. I told James months ago that you two were perfect for each other. Just took you a while to figure it out yourselves." That night, after Martha and James had left and Noah was asleep in his cradle by the fire, Emma stood in the doorway of Cole's room, the room that would now be their room. "Are you sure?" Cole asked, though the hope in his eyes was unmistakable. "I've never been more sure of anything," Emma said, and stepped inside. Their first night as true husband and wife was everything Emma had hoped for, tender and passionate, built on months of trust and growing love. This was what marriage should be, she thought as she fell asleep in Cole's arms. Partnership and passion, respect and romance, all woven together into something stronger than either element alone. Summer ripened into autumn, and the ranch thrived. Emma's garden produced abundantly, more than enough for winter stores with surplus to sell in town. The herd they'd been able to purchase with their careful savings was small but healthy, showing promise for future growth. Noah took his first steps on ranch soil one sunny September afternoon, toddling between Emma and Cole with delighted squeals. Emma discovered she was pregnant in early October. She'd suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be certain before telling Cole. When she finally shared the news over dinner one evening, his face lit up with such pure joy that it took her breath away. "A baby," he said wonderingly, coming around the table to pull her into his arms. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Emma asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Emma, you've given me everything, a real home, a family, a reason to build something that matters. This baby is just more proof that we're building a real life together." "This time will be different," Emma said softly. "I won't be alone and scared. I'll have you." "You'll have me," Cole agreed. "Every step of the way. I promise." The baby was born the following June, a healthy girl with dark hair like her father and Emma's green eyes. They named her Sarah, after the woman whose death had set Cole on the path that led to saving Emma. It felt right, honoring the past while celebrating the future. Martha and James became surrogate grandparents to both children, visiting often and providing the kind of family support Emma had never known. The ranch prospered as Cole and Emma worked side by side, their partnership deepening with each season. They expanded the herd, built a new barn, and eventually hired 2 ranch hands to help with the growing operation. Years later, Emma would stand on the porch of their ranch house, expanded now to accommodate their growing family, and watch Cole teaching Noah and Sarah to ride, their laughter carrying on the mountain breeze. She'd think about the auction block in Ridgeway, about standing there with no hope and no choices, about the moment Cole Stanton had burst through those doors and changed everything. She'd been sold with her baby, prepared for horror, bracing for the worst. Instead, she'd found a man who saw her as an equal, who offered partnership instead of ownership, who loved her enough to risk everything to keep her safe. The ranch they'd built together was successful now, prosperous enough that they never had to worry about money the way they had in those early desperate days. But Emma knew the ranch wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the life they'd created, built on honesty and respect, strengthened by adversity, and rooted in the simple choice to keep choosing each other every single day. Noah grew up calling Cole Papa, with no memory of Thomas Rowland, the man whose debts had nearly destroyed them all. Sarah was pure joy, fearless and clever, with her father's determination and her mother's strength. 2 more children followed in the years after, twin boys who kept everyone running from dawn to dusk. Emma never forgot where she'd come from or what she'd survived. She made it her mission to help other women in desperate situations, working with Martha to establish a network that provided shelter and support to widows and displaced women throughout the territory. Cole supported her fully, often riding into town to rescue women from situations eerily similar to the auction that had brought Emma into his life. On their 10th anniversary, Cole surprised Emma with a gift, a wooden sign to hang over their ranch entrance. It read Stanton Family Ranch, Eston 1879, with a smaller inscription below, "Built on choice, not chance." "It's perfect," Emma said, tears streaming down her face as she read it. "Because that's what we are. Not an accident or a desperate measure, but a choice we keep making." Cole pulled her close, and they stood together watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and rose, the same colors that had blessed the sky on their wedding night all those years ago. Their story had started with an auction block and a fortune paid to save a stranger. It had grown through partnership and trust, survived fraud and legal battles, and blossomed into a love neither had expected but both had fought to keep. Emma had been sold with her baby, bracing for horror. Instead, she'd found a man who said, "I'll be father and husband both," and meant it with every fiber of his being. She'd found a partner who saw her strength when she felt weakest, who gave her choices when the world offered her none, who loved her not in spite of her past, but because of everything she'd survived to become. The ranch stretched out before them in the fading light, the home they'd built, the life they'd chosen, the family they'd created. It was real and solid, and theirs, built on the foundation of two broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Not the legal battles won or the ranch that prospered, but the simple, profound truth that they'd chosen each other freely, loved each other completely, and built a life that was exactly what both of them needed. Emma Stanton stood on her porch holding her husband's hand, surrounded by the laughter of children and the promise of tomorrow, and knew with absolute certainty that she was finally, truly home.